Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our Meet the Candidates night. I'm Dr. Mary Caitlin White, and I'll be your host for this evening. Tonight, we'll be talking with the 7 candidates for the Greece Central School District Board of Education. The top 3 vote getters will serve a 3-year term, and the 4th highest vote getter will serve a remaining year of the term vacated by myself last year. A reminder to our community members, ballots for the budget vote and for the Board of Election candidates will be mailed to your home, and they must be returned by June 9th. Joining us this evening, we have Jasmine Brewer, Tim Hutton, William Maloney, Sean McCabe, Ryan McDonald, James Sawyer, and John Sawicki. I'm looking forward to learning more about each of you this evening, and with that, we will begin. So for our introduction, remember you have 2 minutes. I would like to learn about what is your background and why are you interested in becoming a school board member. So first up, Mr. Sawyers.
There we go. Thank you, Mary Caitlin. I appreciate that. Good evening, everybody. Thanks for having me. Thanks for doing this. So my name is James Sowers. I am running for a term on the Board of Education. I'm currently on the board. I actually was appointed to fulfill the role vacated by Mary Caitlin in December. As far as my background goes, I have served extensively in the community on multiple boards for nonprofits and education institutions throughout the Rochester area. I've served as a Little League coach in the community, actually going into my 10th year coaching 9 and 10-year-olds. And I've also been a foster parent in the community, which actually back years ago is what really brought me to wanting to run for the Board of Education. I've always been interested in education, but being a foster parent gave me a unique perspective on coming to the district and wanting to serve my community and serve the students and the teachers of the community, centered around particularly special education, the social emotional learning that the district has worked so hard on, and that type of area there. I've also, basically, honestly, I use the role to advocate for local control of education. I think Albany is fantastic, but I think that we need to have more oversight locally. Each school district is different, and our leadership and our teachers in Greece know more than anybody else about that, what our students need and what our teachers need and our community needs. So I've advocated with that or for that on the board, and will continue to do so. So thanks for having me.
Thank you so much, and that was perfect time-wise. Thank you. Next up, Mr. Sawicki. What is your background and why are you interested in becoming a school board member?
Great, thanks, Dr. White. Appreciate the invite here as well. It's a good chance to meet all the candidates. So I'm also running for re-election here for a second term on the board. By way of background, right, I'm a lifelong Greece resident, graduate of Greece Odyssey back in '01 when they were still purple and teal and snow leopards, I believe. I participated in all the extracurriculars then, music, sports, etc. So I certainly have that school experience, to draw from. My background career-wise, I'm a finance professional, so I've worked at Johnson & Johnson, now work for Kodak Alaris. My role is an international one that manages a budget in the neighborhood of about $250 million, which not coincidentally is close to what we manage here within the district. So I do enjoy leveraging that expertise and bringing that to the budget process as we work through that difficult prioritization every single year. But most importantly, right, really it comes down to my kids, right? I have 3 elementary kids, 2 at Craig Hill, 1 at Autumn Lane. They're what brought me to the board to begin with in terms of trying to build a future that I could be excited about, that the community could be excited about. And I think the parent perspective is really important as whatever the issue is, whether you're talking about transportation or reading, online learning, pick the topic, right? I think parents need to have a voice at the table, but what brings me here, right, is really those kids, right? And that perspective, as Mr. Sowers noted, right, I mean, other attachments to the community, whether it's the PTA, coach Little Tykes soccer, and probably my most distinguished role is cookie parent at one of the Girl Scout troops. So anyways, through those connections, I like to bring that perspective to the board and continue my service to you and the community. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sawicki. Next up, Mr. Hutton.
Thank you. Thank you very much for this opportunity. I'm running for the privilege to represent the families of the Greece Central School District. My wife, Cindy, and I, we have lived in the Greece community for over 16 years. We've got 3 children, Harrison, Emmeline, and Maxfield. Harrison graduated last year from Olympia and just finished his freshman year at UB. Emmeline and Maxfield both attend Olympia and are in 9th and 7th grade, respectively. And over the last 7 years, I've served and led the booster boards of the Greece Marching Band and the Greece Olympia Music and Drama. Music and arts are extremely important to my family. As a parent of a child also with autism, I want to be an advocate for families of children with special needs. I've worked for M&T Bank for 20 years. So I'm basically with the community's vote. I'm looking forward to the opportunity to be able to influence district policies to best serve the Greece community.
Thank you, Mr. Hutton. I appreciate that. Next up, Mr. Maloney.
I'm here. I just unmuted.
You're okay.
Things pop up below me and I can't control it. Well, to get started, I'm advocating for my 3rd term on the board. I've been on the board now 6 years. I think we've accomplished quite a bit, including hiring a brand new superintendent who is doing extremely well. I had worked in the school district for over 40 years, and I've been president of labor unions, and I've also worked in the buildings and grounds department as a custodial supervisor. And I have a good insight on what is going on in the district from day to day. And I'm just counting on people's vote to extend me to a 3rd year. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Maloney. Mr. McDonald, you're next.
Can you hear me?
I can.
Okay. So my name is Ryan McDonald. I am I'm a product of Dewey Stone. It's where my heart is. It's where I'm from. I live now up by Lake Shore with my beautiful wife and our 18-month-old son, Quentin. And I am running for school board because I have experience in both professionally and in my volunteer work. I've worked a lot with schools. I'm an attorney by trade. I have represented school districts and teachers in civil defense capacity. I have also had the opportunity as an advocate to represent students in CSE meetings, 504 planning, and things of that nature. As a volunteer, I have worked for a very long time now with Rochester Teen Court as a volunteer attorney mediator. That's an alternative to the criminal justice program that gets kids the services that they need to succeed and avoid. It's an off-ramp from disaster in some cases. I'm also a district commissioner with Turning Point District with the Boy Scouts of America, which is a non-traditional scouting program. It seeks to provide the scouting opportunity to folks who may not have the economic means to participate otherwise, and it's delivered primarily within our schools. So professionally and personally in my volunteer work, I've been in our schools helping our kids. I've talked to people, I've identified some of the issues, and it just seems that a marriage of my skills, if I can offer them to the district, I'm very happy to in this capacity as we seek to continue providing a world-class education for our kids.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Ms. McDonald. Mr. McCabe.
Hi, thank you. Thanks, Dr. White, for doing this evening for all of us. And it's a pleasure to meet the rest of you this evening for the first time face-to-face, some of you. I've been on the board for 12 years. I'm seeking my 5th 3-year term on the Board of Education. I've been president of the Board of Education for the last 6 years. I recently retired as a firefighter after 29 years of service from the Ridge Road Fire District, serving this community. I grew up in Greece. I'm an Olympia graduate. 2 of my children graduated from Greece Athena. They're now professionals in different parts of the country. Community service is a big part of why I ran for the board way back so many years ago, it seems now, for the Board of Education. And I'm a strong believer in this community, what this community has to offer. And our greatest asset is our kids and the kids we educate in this district. and it's become my passion. I thoroughly enjoy serving on the Board of Education. There's ups and downs in board service, but there's a lot more ups than downs, and I'm just thrilled and looking forward to continuing, especially I think with my experience, it's going to be important coming through this COVID crisis to continue on the Board of Education and assist my fellow board members in moving forward, and our superintendent, our district, and getting us on the right track. And I agree with some of what Mr. Sowers said. Education is a big local control issue, and I think it's important for local communities to decide what's best in education. And at times you have to advocate and push back a little bit against the state. And that's it. So I'm asking everyone for their vote, and I look forward to a good evening with the rest of you tonight. Thanks.
Thanks, Mr. McCabe. Ms. Brewer.
Good evening. Thank you for having me. And it is nice meeting everyone tonight. So my name is Jasmine Brewer, and I am a product of the Rochester City School District. I graduated from East High School. I have been a Greece resident for 8 years now. I moved out to Greece when my daughter was in first grade. I have 2 kids in the Greece Central School District, 2 that go to Olympia. One's in middle school and one is going to high school. So as far as my background, I currently work for URMC in the social work division. I'm an infant and maternal health educator. I work with pregnant moms. Aside from that, I volunteer with working with young girls in an etiquette school, teaching them about etiquette and just life skills. But most importantly, I'm a parent, and that's what draws me to the school board. I've always been active in my kids' education, inside and outside of the classroom. I believe that it takes a village, and that village is the school district, meaning the staff, whether it be the custodian, the principal, the teacher, whoever comes in contact with that child. So that's what draws me to it. I do volunteer at school activities. I attend as many meetings as I can. I also served as parent PTA president for 2 years, for 2 terms. So just being a parent, that's what draws me to it, because I believe it is very important to have a parent's voice at the table. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And thank you all for being so concise with your time. That was great, and it'll keep us moving tonight. So question number 1. Greece Central School District's mission has been laid out in the Envision 2022 plan, particularly the lens of equity through which this district views all of its decisions. Equity in our district can be broadly defined as ensuring each student has what they need to meet their goals. Whomever is elected for the Board of Education will be a member when this plan is revised for the future. So what do you believe is one strength of the Envision 2022 plan that you hope will continue moving forward? And what is one area of the plan that you view as an area for growth or for change? So succinctly, what do you think is a strength of the current mission of our district? And where is an area that we could grow? So first up, Mr. Hutton.
Thank you. As far as strengths go, I would definitely say the technology has grown by leaps and bounds, definitely through this COVID crisis, but even prior to that, with a majority of the middle school and high school students there, they were all getting their Chromebooks, and now we've even watered it down to the elementary schools. So I think that's pretty impressive. The students need the resources available to them to succeed, and one of the biggest resources would be technology. As far as a area to improve, I'm going to go with under special education and special needs. Again, I've talked with a lot of families, a lot of parents through the different schools that I've come in contact with, and those kids, those families that have the special needs children, their biggest concern is they don't always feel that they're being heard by the district. And they feel like they're being left out. They don't know all the answers, and they don't know how to get the answers. So if elected, it's one of my priorities, is to make sure that we are effectively representing those families out there that need the help, and they know where to get it and what all is available.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Mr. McDonald, one area of strength under the Envision 2022 plan and one area that you could see we could continue to grow.
Sure. I think it's a strength that we've committed to focusing on restorative practices. I think that's really important when you're talking about addressing some concerns and issues within our schools, that it's important to approach the whole person, and part of that is restorative practices. A lot of that's what we do in teen court, of trying to bring the stakeholders to the table to have a frank, open conversation and help our kids more directly rather than just punitively, which is not a good thing. As far as a way to grow, I think just as a new parent, only having an 18-month-old, and he's our first child, communication with folks that maybe don't have kids in the district right now, but are still stakeholders in the community for what the district is doing, finding ways to engage with them. It's a very complicated world that we live in, even more so recently, but there's different methods of communicating with people. You know, we have a lot of folks that don't email or do social media, so reaching those people and getting their input and their feedback on a lot of the things that are going on in the district, I think would help give a better vision as to what, as a community, we can do to continue to support our schools and our kids.
Great. Thank you. Thank you so much. Mr. McCabe, one area of strength and one area we can grow.
So I guess from the Envision 2022, the way I look at it, and probably what I'm most proud of with the whole plan, is that it's not just a bunch of words on paper. It's become a mindset. It's a district focus. It's the mindset. It's the vision of where we're going. It's not just words on paper. It has meaning to everybody from the superintendent's office, the Board of Education, all the way down through our teachers, our bus drivers, through everybody that works for Greece Central, down to our kids and our families. So I think that's a huge asset for our community. And I mean, being part of, establishing a regional network when it comes to CRE, I think is also a huge asset. Bringing our vision and how we've gotten here to other school districts. So it's just not words in other school districts either. I think is super important, and it puts us on the forefront as a leader, not only in this county, but in the state and in the nation when it comes to our work there. An area where I'd like to see improvement, and I don't necessarily know if it's an area of improvement, but it's more along the lines of our community schools. Our community schools, what we're doing there, developing more partnerships, because school has become so much more than just reading, writing, and arithmetic. It's become, for some kids, it's where they can get medical care, where they can get dental service, where they can get, bring food home for the weekend, the food bank. And that's evident in the meals we've been serving since COVID started. It's been evident in our, the stocking in our food shelves that we've done. So it's been super important in that regard. And I would like to see that, continue to expand and continue to grow, because Greece is an ever-changing community. And I think it's super important that we continue to build upon that and, gather our resources, and through partnership, that's going to be super important. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Ms. Brewer.
Okay, I'm sorry. I had trouble unmuting myself. So I believe that the greatest area of strength would be actually confronting this topic, and knowing and realizing that there is a lot of need for changes within the Greece district. And I believe one area of improvement is what you said.
Yeah.
I believe it would be having more of the students' voices involved. I believe is super important, because every procedure and policy that we have, no matter what district it is, children are directly affected by it. Thank you.
Ms. Brewer. Mr. Sowers.
There we go. Sorry about that. So I, as far as looking at the Envision 22 plan, I would say a strength that I recognize within the district would be really a subset of our safe and healthy environment, which would be the social emotional learning component, and the dedication from our district leadership through the Greece teachers and the support staff with regards to social emotional learning. I think it's very important when we look at our student body and we see what it brings to them, the self-awareness, the social awareness, responsible decision-making, self-management. I think that's very important for the district and for our students. And so I would say that's been a great thing there. And I would say, secondly, actually, for an area of growth, would be that I think that the district, we've got a very distinguished leadership team. We've got a very distinguished teaching staff and support staff. We've got 11,000 students, or just under 11,000 students in the district. And I really think that sometimes the district needs to do a better job. We're the eighth largest in the state, and we really, I shouldn't say better job, but we have an area of growth and opportunity to really grab the ear of the New York State Department of Education with regards to what works and what doesn't work. As far as curriculum review, our matrix is as far as the K through 5 essentials and the components there, K through 12 matrix as far as curriculum review. And then the assessments amongst, throughout all of the grade levels, including the Phoenix Academy, and what works and what doesn't work. I think that's where we've got a great ability there. We've got a distinguished leadership team and teaching staff that can really grab the attention of Albany. So I think that's where we have an area for growth. I think overall 2022 Envision has been fantastic. And I think we definitely hit, the efficient operations. I would echo something that Mr. McCabe said as well, which would be the community schools, I think would be an area of growth as well.
Great, thank you so much. Mr. Stuckey.
Great. So I jumping on Mr. Sowers, right? He stole my thunder. I think that's what you get by going, number 7 here, right? But I have to echo just for real quickly around social emotional learning, right? So, when you think about your life, right, and you fast forward through high school and you leave, right, and you get asked question, hey, do you remember your first chemistry test or your first chemistry course? No, the answer is probably no. You don't know what the bonds are. You've forgotten that. That's gone by the wayside. But the essential skills that you pick up in terms of that self-awareness, that relationship building, and how you interact with people, right? Those are human skills that create great people. And that's what I want our students to be, right? So when you graduate them and they walk across the stage, you know that you've added value to the community and the world, right? Because they're good people. And if you do that, right, I think that's a checkbox, right? I'll see how much time I got here, right? But we'll squeeze it quick. I did want to shout out just on the equity piece, right? One of the things I've seen a lot of strides in is really around professional development and the focus the district has had in recent days in terms of getting those badges out there, education bias around interviewing practices, et cetera. I think as you change the composition of our educators and our staff and represent really the demographic shift we're seeing within our town, I think that's going to make strides for us going forward. So it's great to see that from a district perspective. And only 30 seconds on weakness, but I'll fill the time here. So it's really around, I would say around the budget process. Superintendent Khalili does an excellent job pulling it all together. We're going to get a pinch here from a state perspective, whether it's pandemic related or otherwise, using the fiscal transparency data and looking for other synergies to work with fellow districts to save some money, look for other revenue sources so we can save taxpayers some money at the end too. How'd I do?
Right under the wire. Great job.
Close.
And Mr. Maloney.
There we go. I'd like to talk about actually to get off a little bit of the curriculum area and talk about empowered staff. Superintendent Groutman is a great leader, probably one of the best in the state. To give you an example, last year, Mr. Luther, who was the director of facility operations, went to Mrs. Groutman and asked her about starting a new disinfectant type program. Way ahead, a year ahead of what COVID has been asking about now. New tank sprayer devices with tablets that covered large sweeping areas, which kept COVID down to a very, very minimum in our district. This is just one example of the type of leadership skills she has in empowering her staff to come up with creative ideas and new things, and embraces change so often that is needed in the school district. Another area that I can cover quickly was a need, as I have a granddaughter with autism also, and another one with special needs, and our district.
Mr. Maloney, you've cut out. No, we can't hear you. Would you be able to try logging out and logging back in and we'll finish your response?
Are
There
we
we go.
here?
Yep, now we can
Okay.
hear you. All right, you have about 40 seconds left from when you said.
Well, I'd like to thank all the candidates who showed up tonight, and I've loved hearing your responses. And good luck to all of you in this upcoming election. That's all I have, Mary Caitlin. Thank you very much for hosting too.
Oh, of course. Happy to be here. So question number 2. Just making sure we've got everybody. Question number 2. So regardless of differing viewpoints, boards of education need to be able to work together. Can you give an example of a situation where you helped a group of people work together to solve a problem, and tell us how you influenced a positive outcome? So a difficult situation, and how did you use your skills to support the group in a positive outcome? Because you will face disagreements in this room, but you'll move forward for the best of the kids. So first up, Mr. McCabe.
The fix was in. So being a board member is super. When I came on the board, like I said, 12 years ago, it was very, very contentious. And I think it basically was a very difficult time for this community. It was a very difficult time to be on the Board of Education. Every night, every board meeting was like the Friday night fights. It wasn't a good time for Greece Central. It was an area to be ashamed of. And I vowed when I became president, I was going to change that dynamic through leadership. And that's, in my opinion, what I've done. I've brought a group of people together that come from very different backgrounds, very different ideas, very different views politically, very different views, age range, career backgrounds, et cetera. And I think I've done a pretty good job in my 6 years in numerous issues. I don't want to single out one issue and make one issue more important than any other issue. But I think overall in those 6 years, I've brought the board together. There's times we still disagree, but I just had a conversation with one of my colleagues the other day on the Board of Education. And it's about, at the end of the day, you can disagree, you can argue, you can be passionate about your argument. But at the end of the day, you need to respect your colleagues on the Board of Education. And it's when you're done, you still house the family. You can still have a cup of coffee or stop and have a beer, whatever it may be. I think that's the key to being an effective board member. And I think it's a key to being an effective board leader, is that you keep the group together, but you remember to respect one another and respect the different backgrounds, the different views, and the different opinions that everybody has. And you do what's best, in your opinion, moving forward and voting appropriately to support the community and to support our school district. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Mr. Maloney.
As Sean said, being very diverse boards, but we all seem to have gotten along together. So, and we're able to give our viewpoints and all come to a collective idea. I don't know if any one person did them, except for Sean. Sean brought us all together. And we had seen in the past, me being in the district quite a while, has seen in the past a board that was very dysfunctional at times and couldn't get along. And unfortunately enough that even Mary Caitlin here was a board member who I sat next to, and she actually tutelaged me more than I tutelaged her. And we always had stuck together and had some great ideas. One thing to be quickly, I was my first year on the board, I was worked in a district for 40 years, so I was used to coming and going as I pleased. I didn't realize at that time that being a board member changed everybody's view towards me. Walked into school, said hello to the secretary, and she said, "Well, where do you think you're going, Mr. Maloney?" I says, "I was just going to go down to see my granddaughter and see her teacher." not anymore. You need to sign in. I need to see your license, and I need to you need to follow protocol. And so it was quite a learning experience that I had to adjust the way I thought. So, like I said, good luck to everybody, and I'll sign off now.
Thank you, Mr. Maloney. Mr. Sawicki, how have you influenced groups to work positively together?
Yeah, so I think I'll go into kind of my day job, right, in terms of at work, right? So in finance, right, a lot of what we do is around budget reviews, right, and driving profit, et cetera, et cetera. And you can imagine, much like a board, right, you have varying viewpoints, right? You have the engineering team and the marketing team and the sales team. They all want money, right? They all want resources, and they all want your attention, right? And all for very good reasons, because they're passionate about it. And from the finance side, right, to drive the most value, right, I think what you really have to do is be an effective listener and be an engaged listener and take those perspectives in, right? I don't think a good leader is the first person to talk in a meeting, right? You really got to take that perspective in, and helps you arrive, I think, at a better conclusion. And so you don't want to jump the gun, so to speak, right? So for me, I practice that every day, right? And I hope to drive value in my career, right? And similarly for the board, right? So Mr. McCabe had mentioned some, contentious conversations you have, and you certainly have that on the board. And I think the important thing, again, is respecting that diversity of thought, diversity of opinion, and helping it shape your perspective to arrive at the best outcome for the district and for the students overall. Thanks.
Great. Thank you so much, Mr. Hutton.
Yep. So I've been on the Grease Marching Band Booster Board for 7 years, and several years ago, my at the top from the director, and so basically a brand new staff came in, and as far as the Booster Board, we are kind of an auxiliary group of parents who run the booster side of it. We have our own budget that we've got to be responsible for. We've got to be able to, collect dues from the parents and make sure that any expenses that the district isn't covering, that's what the boosters do. Well, so that's a typical job, typical life in the booster board. However, when you have a brand new staff, and there were parents who were upset about the previous director leaving, and then the new director coming on, and unknowns and everything else. That was a difficult situation, and that was my first term in there as president. So I had to lead the parents and the booster organization through that year, and we did really well. We got through it, and last year the marching band had their best season ever. It had nothing to do with the boosters by any means. The kids were awesome and amazing, but from the leading and the perspective of the parents in that kind of difficult situation. When we first started there with the new director, it worked out extremely well, and we're extremely excited to have Nick Carrazza as our director. So thank you.
Thank you so much, and we're all very proud of our marching band. They impress us whenever we're leaving board meetings. They'd be out there practicing, no matter the weather or the night. Mr. Sowers.
Thank you. So I would say, I tend to echo what Sean had, Mr. McCabe had said earlier with regards to, I don't know that there's a single area, because what I do for a living, I'm a director at a $3 billion real estate company, and I forgot to say that in my introduction, my day job. And I will tell you, though, in a real estate company, and as I was a multi-million-dollar producer for 20 years in the real estate business, I bring conflict together all the time. That's what I do. Not only is it conflict in business, there's emotion tied to it. You're talking about businesses, people, commercial spaces, and homes. And how I do that is I always reach a consensus through actually just a level head. I have to tell you, I purposely don't go in with a single feeling about how I want the outcome to come, what the outcome should be. I actually go in just with a mindset of, let's have a win-win solution here. I do that through mutual understanding, mutual agreement, trying to keep people level-headed. I can tell you that I directly manage 42 people. Of course, there's conflict there, of course, every day in the real estate world, and actually settling their clients' disputes as well. and reaching consensus and agreement. You're talking about the biggest asset that people purchase, not to mention it's charged with emotion. And I do that just by being level-headed, being calm, and adding a sense of humor. I think anyone who knows me will tell you I love to have a little bit of at least a sense of humor, not inappropriate humor at the time, but I will tell you it's enough to keep people level-headed. So when I look at that, I see that it's a matter of just coming up with a win-win solution for people through mutual understanding, mutual agreement, letting people understand, and letting them know that I actually do empathize with their situation and I understand everything that's going on both sides of it. But let's reach an agreement so we can all walk away happy and continuing on with our lives.
Great, thank you so much. Ms. Brewer, can you tell us about a difficult situation and how you influenced a positive outcome?
Yes, so as a parent, most of the time my examples will come from parenting. So I'll give an example of a time this current school year where my son was called a name outside of his name. Now, as a parent, it's easy to become angry or upset at something like that, but I used it as a learning curve for both me, my son, and everyone involved. Just to show my son that, you rise above difficult situations, and you never know the understanding or education that someone may have behind a word they use. So it was a learning curve for everyone. So instead of keeping a level head, I went to the school principal. We had a talk and with my son, just to make sure that everyone felt respected and had a voice at the table, like, why would you do this? How did that make you feel? And then after that, I had a talk with the superintendent and just voice some of my concerns. I think even in a situation that could be negative for a kid, I believe it can be positive, depending on how you go and you attack it. And just going to her respectfully and telling her some concerns. So myself and other people can come together and make sure that every kid has a positive experience at school. I think it showed a lot of leadership skills. It showed that communication was important, and it also showed that even when there's differences of opinion, that you could still come together so both parties leave out happy and feeling like they're understood. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. McDonald.
So facilitating difficult conversations is what I do for a living as an attorney. As a civil litigator, there is no easy conversations. I think it's important, and this is kind of one of my strengths as an attorney, is facilitating those conversations. And part of it is approaching it with the humility that I don't understand your perspective because I can't. We're different people. We come from different backgrounds, experiences, and how you're perceiving something is not something that I will be able to immediately understand. But if I listen to what you're saying and appreciate where you're coming from, I can have a better perspective on why you're saying what you're saying or why your objective is what your objective is. And I think that's important to approach any difficult conversation with that. And it's also important to try and translate perhaps to other people, especially in a group setting where there's multiple different viewpoints, to try and rephrase perhaps what someone's trying to say in a moment of passion into something that someone on the other side of the table might be better able to understand from their perspective as you perceive it. But it's still facilitating that conversation, and it doesn't happen easy. As an attorney, I've represented kids with disabilities in school settings and in the community, and those are the types of conversations that unfortunately tend to be tenuous. A particular example, I was representing a young woman who needed an accessible bus to get to her school, and her landlord in this apartment complex didn't want the bus in the complex anymore because it happened to slide off the driveway and it damaged a sign. So he banished the bus from the apartment complex, and over a series of phone calls, I was finally able to appeal to his reason that even though he's upset about his sign, that there are laws that tell him he can't do that. And we were able to resolve that, and she was able to take the bus. But it took a long time, and it took a lot of conversations, but it's an important skill to have in every situation, especially in a school district.
Wonderful, thank you so much. On to question number 3. So, In case you were unaware, just to name a few, schools must ensure social, emotional, physical health of learners. We must sustain highly qualified faculty and staff. We must provide rigorous instructional programs and assessments and meet the ever-changing mandates put forth by the government, most of which are unfunded. This is all expected to be done as state aid is not provided in proportion to need of our learners. In fact, over the next academic year, districts could see funding reduced in an unprecedented manner. So, when faced with budget deficits and an ever-growing list of school requirements and student need, what will you use to guide your decision-making skills or decision-making to ensure equitable learning outcomes for all of our learners? First up, Ms. Brewer.
So I would, when there's a need, a long list of needs, I would say prioritizing those needs and seeing really how maybe one can fit over the other, because if it doesn't fit in a budget, that's pretty hard to tackle. And everyone's voice has to be heard on which situation you take care of first. So I guess coming together and hearing the perspectives and opinions of others of what you will prioritize first. But to make it fit at the end of the day, it will be hard work. But I think, when we keep kids in mind and the well-being of them, and their education and health and wellness, that it can be done. Keep a positive mindset about every decision going forward.
Great, thank you. Mr. Maloney. Oh, Mr. Maloney, you're muted.
Well, we know it's all about money. You're given a pot of dollars and you're expected to distribute it wisely and prioritize the items that you are passionate about. And a lot of us, it's about education and it's about curriculum, and you're going to have to work your dollars and cents down to make sense and to have a balanced budget. And it's tough to come up with a balanced budget these days. We're lucky enough at Greece Central to have a great finance team who's got their hand on everything and let you know immediately if there's any changes from the state or any changes in the dollars. And if you run a household, you know what it is. You're going to have bills to pay, you're going to have meals to eat, and you're going to have children to get off to school, and the dollars only go so far. So it's up to the 9 people on the board to understand all that and prioritize and have many, many late discussions on what's to be done.
Great, thank you so much. Mr. Hutton, what will you use to guide your decision making on tough budgets but ever-growing needs?
Well, through the marching band, we have had tight budgets for a long time. It wasn't until just a few years ago that more money became available from the district to support the program, which we're extremely thankful for. But we were used to running on shoestring budgets for years, and my predecessors before me, when there was no budget for a long time from the district, they ran it themselves. The boosters came up with all of that. So that's life experiences there. With that organization, the other organization that I run at Olympia, the Music and Drama Boosters, or as we like to call ourselves, GOMAD, we run the largest winter craft show in all of Western New York. And for the first time in probably 30 years, because I think we're almost at our 30th year here, we have a real possibility of not being able to have that this year due to the COVID virus. I'm seeing all the other craft shows across the area for early summer and in the fall already being canceled. So I think honestly, I feel it's a matter of time before the district says, hey, Tim, your group can't run the craft show here this year because of everything that's going on. So, that's one of our huge fundraisers for that organization, where the kids who volunteer their times, they actually get a share of our profits that they can use within Olympia. they can use for school trips or prom tickets or things like that. So for us at Olympia right now, we're going to struggle, and it's going to be difficult time, but we're going to get through it together, just like everything else, and with level heads, and that's how we're going to do it. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much. Mr. Sawicki.
Thank you. So I guess, again, leveraging some of my business career, right? So I used to work for J&J, and any decision they made, and you guys may remember the great Tylenol scare right back in the 80s, and they questioned whether they should do a recall. And what governed their decision was really their credo, right, that put customers first. And I think similarly, being a member of the board, right, you look to our credo, which is really our 5 goals that Envision 2022 that we started about before, right? And so when something comes up for proposal, what I've seen already working, and it is effective, if it doesn't slot into one of those 5 goals, right, or if you're stretching the explanation to get it there, I think the decision's already made for you, right? Because that has been so ingrained into our culture and the pathway to success for our district. To me, that becomes your compass that you kind of filter all first decisions through, right? Then it becomes a matter of prioritization. Keep the cuts away from the classroom. We've done that multiple years in a row now, and we'll keep doing that, but you can't get blood from a stone. And we're starting to hit that point, right? So what do you do next, right? You got to change the game a bit, right? And we've tried that as a board in terms of advocating for some of these unfunded mandates you've talked about, Dr. White, right? Whether it's unfunded state testing, who knows what this pandemic will bring in terms of what they'll ask of the classrooms in terms of splitting and separating, and who knows, 7 transportation runs a day for each kid, right? There's going to be a lot of choices there, right? And, we'll have to fight City Hall, so to speak, on some of these conversations. And as many of the candidates mentioned tonight, keep those decisions local as much as we can. But really, it is about that prioritization process. And I think as you kind of check through those boxes there and follow that rubric, you end up with the best choice for the school. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mr. Sawicki. Mr. McDonald.
Yeah, not to piggyback on what everybody else is saying. It's important to keep the cuts, if they have to come away from the classroom, keep them away from the kids' everyday lives and their experiences in the classroom. This is unprecedented what we're looking at with the effect that the pandemic is going to have on state funding. It's no secret that state funding has been an issue for a very long time with unfunded foundation aid and similar issues. To kind of to dovetail off of what the previous question was, some of it's going to be difficult conversations and sticking to the 5 pillars of the Envision plan and what we're committed to as a district and how we can continue to deliver that with what we have and what we're able to do, and to hold keeping things the way they need to be for our kids to be learning. It's not going to be pleasant, but we all have to come to the table with reasonable expectations and be committed that we're not going to leave upset with what we've all agreed to. You have to be committed to what you're going to do in times like this. And it's not gonna be an easy conversation. And it wasn't going to be before the pandemic, and it certainly isn't now. But I feel as a candidate, having had those conversations, I'm not afraid of facilitating those conversations and how best to move forward.
Great, thank you so much. Mr. McCabe.
Like you said, it's hard. Every year we cut. Every year that I've been on the Board of Education, we've had to cut in some capacity. And I think it's the thoughtfulness that goes into those cuts. You look at programs that you have or classes you have that just the fiscal avenue behind it can no longer run. We've cut French. This year we're cutting IB. We're continuously cutting things, and you try to make those decisions, like several of my colleagues have said, as far from the classroom as you can, or impacting the least number of students you can. What I think the bigger issue moving forward, when you talk about unfunded mandates, is going to be our advocacy. How do we advocate moving forward for whether it's federal money, whether it's some of these unfunded mandates going away? And I think realistically, coming from my background in EMS, 30 years in EMS, it comes down to triage. And I hear educators use the phrase triage all the time, but educators don't understand real triage. I mean, sometimes you have to make that really hard decision. And that's what, as a Board of Education, we're really going to have those discussions and maybe make a very unpopular decision that, like, people are like, well, how could they do that? But sometimes with triage, you have to make that decision. And I think all of us, you know, whoever ends up as the 9 members on the board, the cabinet, and other, you know, in the budget department, are all going to have a little bit better understanding of triage moving forward. And some of those things, I mean, there are going to have to be cuts. I mean, there's going to be cuts somewhere. I mean, we can't sustain where we are, especially if you look at the governor decides to cut 20% of our state aid. If state aid stays flat next year, I mean, there's no way you can do more with less. It's going to be hard to keep what we have with less. And those decisions are going to be difficult, but it's going to take a thoughtful group of 9 people that are going to advocate for what they believe is right and making the best decisions for our community moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Last but not least, Mr. Sowers.
Hey, thank you. Yeah. So to answer your question, as far as what would I obviously prioritize, or how would I prioritize, right? In my thinking, I would definitely, I think everybody said it, students, right? Students, classrooms, but I also think there's another component there. It's not just for me, I should say for me personally, when I look at budgetary cuts and when I sit on the board and I listen to, you know, Assistant Superintendent Khalili and Superintendent Grotman present their budget with some cuts, what I really do is I look inward as far as how does this really affect not only the students in the classrooms, but our teachers and anybody else who touches our students on a daily basis, from bus drivers, facilities to support staff. And that's really where I look at it, right? And then what I do at that point is I then start to look at my mindset, how does this affect facilities/operations, right? We want our kids to be in healthy, safe, comfortable environments. We want their parents and everybody to come into great places. So I think about that too. You know, I also think about the idea of, you know, Mr. McCabe had mentioned, you know, this year we had to cut IB. Anybody who knows me knows I love IB. And, you know, and it was a very tough conversation, but I voted in support of the budget because it's absolutely true. We do sometimes need to make cuts, and we need to make cuts where maybe money is not necessarily best spent. And when I look at the flip side of maybe where that money is better spent efficiently from an educational perspective, it's a little bit better for our students, more advantageous for our students, it gets my support. So everything that I do is very student-centric, but I don't necessarily just mean the students. I mean anybody and everybody that touches our students on a daily basis and how they affect our students. Also, I would piggyback actually something on that Mr. McCabe did say. I think we need to advocate. I think Mr. Sawicki said it too. We need to advocate. We are, again, the 8th largest district in New York State, and we need to utilize that power that we have as the district to make sure that the federal level and the state level understand the needs for our school districts and our students on a daily basis. So that's the lens that I would look through, Dr. White.
Thank you. I appreciate all of your answers to that question. It's a tough one, and it won't be getting any easier anytime soon. So, time to go into our conclusion. I'm an eternal optimist, and this pandemic has tried our human spirit, and it's going to be something that affects our society and our community for decades to come in the future. What is one thing you hope we learn from this emergency and that we take forward as we rebuild our nation? And alongside that, you can add any final comments. You'll have your 2 minutes. So what do you hope we take forward as a society, and any final comments you might want to share with our community members before we finish? So first for our conclusion is Mr. Sawicki.
Great, thanks, Dr. White. Yeah, so yeah, I think there is a silver lining here, right? And you know, the time in quarantine has forced us to kind of reflect on what you want that new normal to be, right? And some of the extracurriculars, and while you miss them, right, it has helped to focus on family and figure out what's truly important to you, right? And so I hope for the district, for our educational system, we go back and really use that same reflection, right, and really look at each thing and each issue, right, and say what's important to me and what do I want to push forward on. I think we, you know, it's been controversial certainly around the online, you know, access, right, and I think that's brought up some issues in terms of accessibility in our district as well. So I think we can learn from that. But also, how do we add this tool to our toolbox, right? It's not going to replace in-person education by any means. That's crazy talk, right? But how do we use tools like this, right, to adapt to our new normal? Because it will be a new normal, right? And hopefully, you know, the voters of the community can, you know, support me in my reelection bid. I want to be a part of that process. part of the reopening, part of defining what that new future looks like for Greece Central. So please vote for me to continue my service to you going forward. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Sawicki. Up next, Ms. Brewer.
So I would say this time during quarantine, it has personally taught me to appreciate life on a higher level. Things in life that we do on a regular basis, we take for granted. And this has really been an eye-opener to really appreciate, the relationships with people and take time to appreciate yourself, get to know yourself a little more. A lot of self-reflection, a lot of reinventing yourself. But overall, I think this has taught us a way to be creative as well. So I would just say in closing, that I would like for people to vote for me. I am a parent. I am a highly involved parent, not just for the sake of my kids, but for all students and teachers. I think it's important to support both because I have always valued the relationship with myself and the staff who are with my kids during a lot of their waking hours. So I would just like to have a voice at the table so I can have a voice for every parent. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Mr. Maloney.
Am I on?
You are on.
Oh. At least I'm the entertaining one of the bunch. First of all, I'm glad to see this many people running for the school board. Usually we have to scrape up a few people to run, and this is great. And you all look like great candidates, and I want to wish you all a lot of luck in this upcoming election. And I would also like to serve in a third term. We'll leave that up to the community. Some new things are happening. This is the first time we've ever done anything by absentee ballot. So it'll be interesting to see how many returns. It was an unbearable cost for the district of about $130,000 to have all this mailed out, that I'm sure the governor is not going to reimburse us. And COVID has taught us a lot of things. It taught us about being prepared. It taught us about how to act quickly on different things as homeschool learning. People now have been with their children for 70 some days and straight and are wondering, oh my God, the poor teacher in the classroom. I feel sorry for her. I'm hoping you're all going to give her a gift when you get back to school here in the fall. And hopefully fall comes and hopefully we can get back to semi-normal. As far as being normal again, we're always going to be nervous. We're always going to be carrying around a face mask in our car, and things are just about are changing, and we're going to have to change with it. That's all I have. Thank you and good night.
Thank you so much, Mr. Maloney. Mr. McDonald.
I'd just like to start by thanking you, Dr. White, for facilitating this under exceptional circumstances, and for the district and the candidates for putting this on. What have I learned from this? I think we've all learned to have greater appreciation for the folks that we've been referring to as essential workers, the folks that are really making our lives possible. As an attorney trying to practice law while I have a toddler screaming at me and throwing things at me, I really appreciate the folks that take care of him during the day. And when we're all scared with what's happening, it's not something we've ever experienced before. And it's especially scary for kids, because how do you explain it to kids? And I think, we have a long weekend coming up. A lot of us, almost all of us, should know an educator or a paraprofessional or staff member in school or transportation food service. They've really stepped up and continue to do what's necessary to keep our kids in some sense of continuity and with a familiar face. And I think that helps our kids as we're dealing with the larger crisis. But I think it makes it a little easier for them having a familiar face. So over the long weekend, I'm going to make sure that I thank the folks that are out there doing that, because it's a really important thing that they're doing and able to do. As far as the election that's coming up, I wish everybody the best of luck that's on this call. I have more, rather than spend more time talking about myself, although I'm an attorney and I'd love to talk more about myself. I do have a Facebook page up where I've been sharing issues, and if people want to get in touch with me to talk about something, I'm always available on Facebook Messenger or through LinkedIn. I wish everybody to have a safe and happy Memorial Day weekend. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Mr. Sowers.
There we go. Yeah, thank you very much, Dr. White, for this, and thank you, everybody. I really liked the conversation tonight. It was a lot of great ideas, and I think that the district is in good hands, no matter who the 9 are sitting up there on the Board of Education. I mean that sincerely. As far as what I've learned, through the pandemic, I would say that for me, it's been the biggest thing has been to slow down, enjoy life a little bit. I was working at 100 miles an hour up until this, and it was like hitting a wall when this started. And but it's taught me also to appreciate the human connection. Certainly not just with family, but with friends and just people whom you come across every day. And really that human connection. And it's been really eye-opening in that. I would say as far as going forward, towards the election, I would say, look, I really enjoyed my time here on the board. I love the Greece School District. I think we've accomplished a lot as a district. I'm very proud of everything we've done. I want to continue to work, and I want to remain on a positive path, using those working relationships that I have with, district leadership, community organizations, businesses within the community, serving on the Budget Advisory Committee, Skilled Trades Committee for Scholarship for BOCES, those types of things. That's what I'd really like to do. So it's an honor and it's a privilege to serve the community, and I'm just asking for your vote and your confidence for a second term. And I hope you all have a happy Memorial Day weekend. And it's been very great getting to know all of you that I haven't gotten to know tonight. Pleasure.
Thank you so much. Mr. Hutton.
One of the things that I'm really proud about our district, actually several things about this pandemic really is communication. And also the food service. I mean, to be able to serve lunches, breakfast and lunches to those families that were in need, that still are in need, it's absolutely, it's amazing. I can't, I don't know the folks that have been working, doing that job, but thank you so much, because it's unbelievable to hear that was able to be accomplished during this. Superintendent Grotman's, her weekly emails that would come out, Mr. Fleming's weekly emails from Olympia. The communication has been fantastic, in my opinion. I think that to keep parents up to date and knowing what's going on and what's expected of our kids. This has been crazy. To have our kids home and do all this distance learning, while it sounds great, it's also, sometimes it's a struggle for the kids, and my kids especially. Sometimes they enjoy it, but most times it's been more of a pain and a big pain point for them. So I'm glad that I'm hoping that with our new normal that we truly are be able to get back into the classroom again, because the teachers are teachers, and they're best when they're in front of the kids doing what they do best. So as far as the election goes, thank you so much for hosting this tonight. I really appreciate that. I appreciate the opportunity to present my viewpoints. It's a pleasure meeting all of you, and to Mr. Sawyer's point too. It's been a good conversation tonight. It's neat to hear everyone's perspectives and their opinions. And so I look forward to the upcoming election, and I will again just say thank you very much.
Thank you so much. And to finish it out, Mr. McCabe.
Thank you. With the COVID-19, I'm so proud of how our district has handled the COVID-19. We've adapted, we've overcome. The things that, like several of my colleagues tonight have mentioned, the food service has been amazing. Transportation, security, the teachers switching from leaving school on a Friday and on Monday or switching to online learning, the principals, the guidance counselors, everybody associated with Greece Central has done a fabulous job. The Board of Education, putting our budget together in this, doing this absentee ballot vote. There have been so many things to be proud of as board president. I've probably never been prouder in my time, never been more grateful to be on the Board of Education than I am right now. What I have learned, though, is that online education isn't the answer. School is so much more than being online, and it is not equitable. to so many of our students, and it's not an appropriate form of education. We have to get back to some type of, I'll say, use air quotes, normal school. I think that's what needs to happen. And looking back over my time on the Board of Education, this is a great group of people. I mean, competition is going to be fierce. I'm very proud of the accomplishments in my 12 years on the Board of Education, looking for support from people. I hope to lead the Board of Education through, when we come back in the summer, lead the Board of Education and keep our cohesion and our mutual respect together. And again, the view of Greece Central has changed dramatically in my time on the Board of Education. And it's because of the Board of Education. It's also because of Superintendent Groutman, our teachers, our staff. The whole mindset of the district is different. We're a world-class school district now. We have our challenges. The community is changing. But I think we're in a much better place than we've ever been. And I ask everyone to get out and support the budget. And I hope you vote for me on June 9th. Thank you all. And again, thanks, Dr. White, for all your work tonight. This wasn't easy, especially with Mr. Maloney. He's always a challenge. Now you know what I feel every week.
We got him there. He did great. Thank you to each of you for running for the Board of Education.